Appointment prompts and phone follow-up. I have a dentist office that has tracked me down in other countries to tell me I am due for my tooth cleaning. I have thought about filing stalking charges against them. I mean, that's how aggressive they are. I also understand there are financial motives for this, right? But I got to tell you, it's done marvels for my dental health over the years. Because I'm not motivated to go to dentists naturally. Can I just admit that? All the mainstream doctors' offices have learned what? They've learned how to help us manage by all those little nice things they do, all those appointment prompts and the telephone calls and the postcards. And we have lives, clients whose lives are in absolute chaos. And we expect them to show up at our offices without any such technologies, right? Does that make any sense to you? So what does this tell you? You want to increase show rates in an outpatient clinic? There is an absolute technology to do that. All you got to do is reach out and begin to it's sort of like creating these very recovery-friendly offices that convey to people that what they do and them coming and continuing to come and participate is important to us. And guess what? We miss them when they're not there. Does this remind you of anything? I'm a historian of recovery fellowships, and I know that certain levels of service aggressiveness have gone out of style in certain recovery fellowships. But in some of those early histories of closed small groups, when we didn't have 1,000 groups a week, when somebody didn't show up, the group went and got them. I mean, and that's very much part of the early recovery stories of people who said, I would have never made it if that group hadn't virtually had the faith to come get me and drag me out of places sometimes early on till I got my first stretch of sanity in my life. Institutional outreach. Could we do something like what I described with the outreach worker inside a residential program? One of the questions we get a lot around this is we rigorously measure issues of engagement and retention because it's all about dose. You said it, right? No dose, no recovery. So we got to have dose, and to get a decent dose, we got to have retention. So we got to look in excruciating detail at what's happening for people to disengage with us. Well, I had a place in Michigan contact me many times, and we talked about different strategies of this, and what I suggested wasn't particularly helpful. And the director called me one day and said, I found the magic. We have dramatically lowered our split rate, and we've done it now for almost 5 months continuous. So we know that what we're doing with all kinds of different clients seems to be working. And I said, what magic have you discovered that we can market and peddle across the country, right? And he said, what I do is I have a requirement that each one of my staff must spend 30 minutes each shift of their shift walking the floor with no paper in their hands and no agenda. Doing what? How you doing? I heard your wife called today, right? And doing what? Constant re-engagement and checking in. I call this institutional outreach. You're inside an institution, but what are we doing? I mean, every hour by hour, we're checking in with people and checking their status. Now, in the old therapeutic community, we had that because what? Everybody in the community was expected to be doing that checking in. But in a lot of places, we don't have that. And we got staff locked up doing paperwork and locked up in staff meetings. So what's going on in the milieu when all of us are tied up and nobody's there working the environment? And we get the call about the girlfriend who may have a new boyfriend. Constant. If we're not there at that moment, the call is hung up. We've lost that person that day. So, I mean, it's very simple, very low tech, no dollars to it, but it really pushes this notion of moving out of the processing of people through schedules and activities to getting back to the sort of relational work of engaging and retaining people over time. I also talked about radically altered administrative discharge policies. which would suggest what? Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. How many of you think we have some clients that have chronic self-defeating styles of interacting with professional helpers? Everybody got that? Chronic self-defeating styles of interacting with professional helpers. And what we often get in these kind of incidents where we're throwing people out based on rule issues is we have these compulsive histories that get played out, and we don't even know they're getting played out. And by the way, they could be horribly embarrassing. Let me give you one very quick example. You know you are having a bad day as a clinical director when you get to work and all your staff are waiting for you. Including those who shift ended an hour earlier. And you know you're in trouble when standing behind them are almost all the current clients in residential treatment, also waiting for you. And when they got a spokesman, you're in trouble. So I arrive, this is the scene. And the spokesperson says, we need to talk to you. And of course, I'm looking at this sea of faces and saying, obviously, what's going on? Tell me what's happening. This man has made a mockery of everything this place stands for. And they described a client, this is like Thursday, we'd admitted a client on Monday. The client has wreaked havoc on every rule in the house for 4 days. And they go through, they list out all of these sins for the 4 days. And then they turn to me and says, and what are you going to do about it? I mean, the whole community. I mean, it's like my responsibility to obviously fix this man. So I said, well, it sounds like we need to have a little come to Jesus meeting with him. Go get him. And you know, in a classic kind of TC community meeting style, we did what? We kind of created some new orifices for him. Went through this confrontation on the unacceptable behavior, and we drew a line in the sand and said, the very next time you cross over this line, you're out of here. I've done this 1,000 times in my clinical career early on. So we do that. Very quiet day. Things have gone very well. He's done quite well that day. I felt pretty good going home. I get a phone call about 10:45. He won't go to bed. And we got a rule, lights out, everybody's got to be in bed at a certain time. So, okay, you're the clinical director, what are you going to do? You drew a line in the sand and said the next time you cross over, you're out of here. I threw him out of treatment. I don't know what you're going to do. And by the way, felt okay, pretty good about it, actually. I walk in the next morning into the treatment program, smiles on everybody's faces. It's like families after scapegoating, feels so good. And then the phone rang, and it was a judge. And the judge said to me, this is a judge, close friends, no bullshit with each other, close friends. Bill, let me get this straight. I send to you a man we both know hasn't lived in anything even remotely like human society for at least a decade. I send to you a man we both know has committed every kind of unthinkable crime. And you kicked him out of treatment because he wouldn't go to bed on time? And then he said, I sent this man to you for treatment, not for charm school. And slammed the phone down. You talk about embarrassed? I wanted to die. Now, you know how when you work with clients, you have them all sign a release of information to get those discharge summaries from previous treatments, right? How do you think I felt when the discharge summaries always show up long after you need them, right? Trickled in and described, I had 4 out of 5 histories that I'd actually got of he'd been administratively discharged in the first week of every treatment program he'd been in. Now, who do you think was in control of his treatment? Because it sure as hell wasn't me. And it wasn't the rest of the community. What do you think? You want to talk about being played? I mean, do you want to talk about a self-defeating style? Now, I don't know what that is.